Alright, today we're going to be making some grilled cheese and tomato soup. So we got our tomatoes right here. Got a couple different kinds. So we're going to be putting a bunch of these tomatoes, roasting them, making a nice soup, and then we're also going to make some grilled cheese to go along with it. So making tomato soup was actually one of those things where when I first heard of it, I was like, I don't know, I never made tomato soup. Like, I don't want to go there. Because soups, usually there's so much time and effort that goes into it. But tomato soup's actually really, really quick and easy to make. I'll, of course, walk you through step by step how to do it. And I think grilled cheese and tomato soup is a great place to start if you're building your confidence in the kitchen. You want to learn how to cook more. You want to test out different things. So if you're cold or it's cold where you live and you want a little bit of comfort food, grilled cheese and tomato soup, homemade, can't beat it. All right, let's get into it. All right, so we're gonna kick this off by getting our tomatoes prepared. We're gonna start by cutting off the heads of all of our tomatoes. So that way we have a flat surface where you could put them face down, and we're gonna cut them in half just like that, and then cut them in half again. So we are cutting these tomatoes into quarters. Should look just like this, and then we're going to throw them into a roasting pan. So make sure you get a roasting dish that's big enough to fit all of your tomatoes, but you're just going to do the same thing. And for different size tomatoes like this Roma, we could just cut this in half since it's smaller. No need to cut into quarters. So I'm going to get those in the pan as well, and then we are ready to get our cherry, grape, and other variety of tomatoes, and we can just pour them over top just like this. Now that the tomatoes are go, we're going to take this red onion and we're just going to cut the top off and get this prepared to be cut into quarters just like we did with the tomatoes. So we took off the bottom too, and you're just going to lay it flat, just cut it in half once, and then we're going to get this thing peeled. Now that it's peeled, we're going to cut it in half again into quarters and get this in the roasting pan. Alright, now we can get our garlic prepared. We're just going to take the head off of this garlic just like this. Come right off. There we go. And then you could peel off any of the excess skin that's coming off of the garlic and then get 2 whole heads of garlic in there, and we are ready to go in the oven. Real quick before we go in the oven, I'm going to hit it with a little bit of olive oil and also going to hit it with some salt. So I keep it pretty simple with the seasonings here. Just olive oil, salt, that's all we need, and the rest of the flavor will come naturally. So now that we have all of our ingredients, we're going to go into an oven at 425 for about 20 minutes, maybe 25 minutes. You just really want to keep an eye on it. Once it hits that 20-minute mark, you just want to make sure that these vegetables get a little bit of char on them. They shouldn't be too dark because then you don't want to, of course, burn anything here. But like I said, once it hits about the 20-minute mark, you should be able to pull it out and be good to go. So I'm going to go in the oven with this, and then I will show you what it looks like afterwards, just so you can have an idea of, okay, this is what they should look like once they are done. Alright, so here is the finished product. We did get a little bit of extra char on the skin of the garlic, but everything looks good. This is just what you want. It should have some nice color like this. This is ready to go in the pot and start getting blended up. Let's go. Alright, so now that we have our tomatoes and vegetables ready, we're going to be putting it into this pot here. Using stainless steel, so you do not want to use anything that's non-stick. So something like stainless steel is great, a Dutch oven, but if it's non-stick, this immersion blender is going to scratch it, and you don't want that because that'll end up putting toxins into the food. But you could actually take these tomatoes and vegetables and put them in a normal blender. If you don't have an immersion blender, that's totally fine. And then once that's blended up, you're going to put it right into your pot, and we could add the rest of our ingredients. Alright, so we're going to go directly into our pot with our tomatoes and onions. You're going to separate the garlic out, so just put it in a separate dish for now. We're going to add that separately because we need to squeeze out the garlic. We don't want to add the whole head of garlic in there with the skin and everything because we're going to be blending this up. So now that we got our tomatoes and onions in here, let's go in with some vegetable stock, roughly about half a cup. You can also use chicken stock if you prefer, or even water. I just like stock because it adds a little bit of that extra flavor. And next, we're going to also add either heavy cream or whole milk. So it's your choice, whichever you want to use. Heavy cream might be a little better to add some more thickness if you like your tomato soup a little bit on the thicker side. And we're going to go in with about a 1/4 cup there. If you want it thicker than that, you can add a little bit extra. I'd say you could add about 1/2 cup. So just go based on how you like your soup. But to add some more flavor, we're going to add some basil. So I just throw in a bunch of leaves here. There's really no measurement. It really depends on how much you like basil. You could start out with 3 or 4 leaves and then add some more if you think it's not enough. But I'm going in here with about 5 or 6 or so. And then lastly, we're going to get some freshly grated Parmesan Reggiano. And we're just going to be generous here. We could even add a little bit more, which is totally up to you. Depends on how much you like Parm. Parm's just going to add some additional flavor as well. And then once that's all added, these are all our ingredients, and we're just going to start blending. And then we're going to add the garlic in a second here once we get it blended up. All right, so now we got our roasted garlic. We're just going to look and squeeze out all of the garlic cloves just like this. Perfect. And then this is going to get blended into the soup as well. Lastly, we're going to add some salt to taste. So you want to make sure that you add a good amount of salt here. Don't be afraid of salt, guys. Salt is one of those things where a lot of people are afraid of it. They're afraid of it for health reasons or whatever, but your body needs salt, and it adds a ton of flavor. And if you lack salt, the dish is going to lack flavor. So I'm actually even going in with some more cheese right now just because I gave it a taste and it doesn't have as much of a Parm flavor as I'd like. So just add some salt, some extra Parm if you'd like, and get it blended up like this. So you can see how it's getting nice and smooth. All of the garlic and all ingredients are now nicely blended together, and our soup is ready to go. All right, so now that our soup is good to go, let's get our grilled cheese prepared. We are going to be using a sourdough for our bread choice, and I really recommend using sourdough for grilled cheese. It just pairs so well with the melty cheese. It's also strong enough to where it could hold the sandwich together. So all we're going to do is cut the end off, and then we're going to cut about 1-inch thick slices for our sandwiches. And it should look about this size. This will help hold the sandwich well, and then we could get our cheese prepared. So a pro tip here is do not get pre-shredded cheese. Get a block of cheese just like this. This is sharp yellow cheddar cheese. I love cheddar personally. I think it's one of the best cheeses you could use for grilled cheese. But if you don't like cheddar, really anything that is a type of cheese that will melt, like don't use something like Parmesan. That's really not going to melt well. It could be something that you add to add a little bit of flavor. But I'm using yellow sharp cheddar, and then I also have some Colby Jack. So I got a yellow cheese and a white cheese that we're going to kind of blend together here. So let's get started by getting the cheddar shredded, and then we can move on to the Colby Jack once we got that cheese all good to go. And then we're going to start to get our sandwiches prepared. So we got our bread. We are going to be doing 2 things. So I usually use just butter, and I'll butter one side of the bread. That way when we put it in the pan, it's going to get nice and toasted, and that butter is going to melt into the bread and just make it so much better. So I also have used mayo. I see a lot of people use mayo as well. So I thought the best thing that we could do here is we could do one side with butter and one side with mayo, see which we prefer. So I'm going to butter one side of each piece, just like this, and get it spread all over the bread. And then we're going to do the same with the mayo. So now that we got the butter on there, on the other piece of bread, we're just going to get some mayo. I'm just using some mayo that's made with avocado oil. Avocado oil is just a little bit healthier when compared to things like canola or vegetable oil, which are very inflammatory for humans. So I know grilled cheese is not the healthiest thing as it is, but definitely make healthier choices where possible. So we're going to now get our cheddar cheese added. So we're adding them to both sandwiches. Get it piled on nice and high, just like this. And then we're going to get some of our Colby Jack as well. Pile that on very tall, and then we're going to get these sandwiches closed up, and we're going to prepare to get them toasted in our cast iron skillet and get ready to eat. So now that the sandwiches are closed up, I'm putting one more layer of mayo on the other side of the bread because I accidentally flipped them inside out. So that's my fault, but now we are good to go, and we are ready to go in the pan. All right, so I'm going to be using my cast iron skillet for this. You could use a nonstick pan as well. It doesn't have to be cast iron. But what I do recommend and what's really important to keep in mind is you want to make sure that the heat is either set to medium or medium low. And the reason for this is because if you put your heat on too high, what's going to happen is the bread is going to burn and the inside of the sandwich, the cheese is not going to melt properly. So it's going to be cold on the inside, burnt on the outside. That's not what we want. So we're going to cook it at a medium to medium low heat so the bread gets nice and toasted, and it also gives the sandwich some time for the cheese to melt inside to make the perfect grilled cheese. And one more pro tip, we are going to add this to the pan. We're actually going to get it in the oven first at 350 so the cheese melts, and then we're going to get it on a nice medium to medium low heat so the bread gets nice and toasted. Then you could flip. The reason I added it to the oven first was to get the cheese melted because this bread is so darn thick. So this really helped melt it inside. So that's another pro tip if you have really thick bread. Put it in the oven first at a low heat, let the cheese melt, then get that nice crust on your bread and you are good to go. All right, so we are ready to eat. We're going to start plating by getting our tomato soup in a bowl. You can see it's nice and hot and steaming. And then we're going to get our grilled cheese out of the cast iron and onto our cutting board. But first, we're going to finish seasoning our soup with a little bit of extra Parm and then some creme fraiche, which is going to add some nice texture and a little bit of flavor as well. And then we're going to finish it off by garnishing with some extra basil leaves. And we are ready to dive in. So we took our first bite. Me and my wife are giving it a try and came out really good. It's so simple, super easy to make, lots of flavor. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you give this a try.